So, let me introduce the first speaker of the afternoon, who is Andrea Bertaglio. And Andrea is an environmental journalist, and he's going to talk to us about sustainability around meat and cured meats in Italy. So please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
So, good afternoon. The presentation is somewhere. Okay, let me check. Sorry. Forward. Okay, just. I'm sorry. Well, waiting for some aids. I'm introducing myself. My name is Andrea Bertaglio, and I don't find my presentation. Sorry, just screwed it up. Okay, here. Sorry, I was not expecting these first two slides to be different. My name is Andrea Bertaglio. I'm an environmental journalist. I'm from Italy, as you can hear from my accent. And I'm here after a very interesting morning of data and lectures, which were very inspiring. And I'm really honored, actually, to be here speaking among these experts and with such a high-level audience, because after such a morning, I'm here speaking about an experience and a report, which is the Sustainable Meat Project. I don't say carni sostenibili because I see it's quite a problem for not Italian people. So this Sustainable Meat Project is actually something really peculiar, because I'm not used as Italian to be taken around Europe and the world to show something innovative. And Italy is mostly, in Italy there is mostly a huge fragmentation in every kind of sector. And in this case, when it's about meat and cured meats, after 2-3 decades of attacks from the vegan, from the animal rights groups and so on, the three major meat trade associations, so Assocarni for beef, Assica for swine and pork meat, and Una Italia for poultry, put themselves together to create a new association. Carni Sostenibili is an association which is a communication project. It's a communication project to respond to the attacks, I said. How? With a scientific base. So everything it's said must absolutely have a scientific reference. So the problem with the scientific informations we were talking about this morning is that often they're not really easy to understand for the public, and that's why I'm here. So I'm a journalist, and I've been involved by the group of Carni Sostenibili to help them to communicate to the people. Let's say, is that correct in English to say vulgarize? Sounds maybe mean, but it's a way to take the scientific informations to let the public understand that most of what the people or the groups attacking meat production and consumption are incorrect, if not fake. So I started in collaborating with writing this book that we will speak about later. I wrote a book myself. In a few minutes we will speak about that as well, because as a journalist I don't write anymore about zootechnics, about meat production. So I still write as a journalist, but about renewables and e-mobility, completely different stuff. So it was not reliable any longer to write about meat, because I really took position in defense of meat, as is the title of my book. But I started collaborating in editing this book, written by Elisabetta Bernardi, Ettore Capri, and Giuseppe Pulina. Giuseppe Pulina is the president of the association, and there are 3 university professors, nutrition, an agronomist, and Giuseppe Pulina, a zootechnics expert. And actually, I collected the informations and explained how I ended up in this surrounding, also speaking in my own book, so not this one, many things other speakers have said today. So about myths, so the fact that in Italy people are still saying that meat is plenty of hormones, growth hormones. Meat is full of antibiotics. So in the book and with this project, we are explaining that hormones in Europe are forbidden since 38 years, since 1981. Or I also spoke about spinach, by the way, but it was not about calcium, about iron. So we are letting people understand that to have the same amount of iron of 80 grams beef, you will need to eat 25 kilos of spinach. And in my book, I do that explaining my personal path. So at the kindergarten, when they were forcing me to eat spinach, which I hated, and now I have an excuse not to do that. No, I have nothing against spinach either. So all these kind of informations I was thanking Anne Motet because we recently used a lot the 80% data. So the fact that 80% of what ruminants are eating is not edible for humans. So these are exactly the key messages to let the people understand and learn something about this field. How? Through the same, using the same weapons. So engaging influencers, making videos. I just made as author 3 emotional videos showing how young farmers, I've chosen people around 30 years old, are giving their life to produce meat or animal products, house dairies and so on. So the idea again is to give information to the public with a scientific base to go beyond all these fake news often which are circulating. The main areas on which the Sustainable Meat Project and the book, which is a scientific report, but now is also a book in bookshops in Italy, are these ones: safety, and on the website animal welfare as well, because it's very hot topic, waste, because the food chain, the meat chain is virtually without waste. And it's on the website we speak of waste and also of economics because of the huge impact of livestock on the economy. And the environment, because of course the attacks we were speaking this morning about that are often about the environmental impact and the climate change. And nutrition, because you cannot avoid to give your children meat or to a pregnant woman meat, even if many people are doing that. But I'll come back to this point as well in a few minutes. As I said, it's behind Carne Sostenibili there is a quite huge group of experts, so academics, who have developed the environmental hourglass. This is our pride and joy. This is the symbol of the project, as you can see also in the logo of the association. A symbol of balance, but is a graphic evolution of the double pyramid you have all heard about. So what is it saying? I have a video of 1 minute, which I hope is working to explain it better than myself. We have the luck in Italy to have the Mediterranean diet, which is very easy to follow, which is not only about food, but is a question of lifestyle. And the nutritional guidelines are, the major one, are fitting with the Mediterranean diet, food-wise. And if you follow this diet, this environmental hourglass confirms that the impact in CO2 equivalent of the diet of 1 week of an average person in Italy is more or less the same of food stuff which is impacting less in terms of CO2 emissions, but which you are supposed to eat much more. So you're supposed to eat something like 15 times more fruits and vegetables than meat and cold cuts if you want to follow the Mediterranean diet. If you do that, the environmental impact is more or less the same. It could be also the economical hourglass, because also the price, meat, particularly red meat, is costing more than salad, but again, you eat 80 grams or 100 grams of beef to get 25 kilos spinach iron, and you should make the iron hourglass, but that's another thing. So I have a short video explaining in 1 minute what it's about. Let's see if it's starting.
Meat is rich in essential nutrients and has always been present in our alimentary traditions, recognized by UNESCO as a heritage of humanity. But can you say that it is also sustainable? The Mediterranean diet foresees eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, and a balanced consumption of meat and other protein-rich foods. Nutritionists recommend 14 portions per week. For our protein requirements, around 400 grams of meat and cold cuts are recommended per week, while the amount of fruits and vegetables needed is nearly 15 times higher. If we try to calculate now the environmental impact of these consumptions, we realize that the impact of proteins is in reality very close to that of fruit and vegetables. So much so as to create the shape of an hourglass. An environmental hourglass that may be subject to small variations depending on the products we prefer, and that shows us how strong our prejudices towards nutrition can be. For example, choosing to use a bicycle instead of a car, even for a few kilometers per week, affects the welfare of the environment a lot more with respect to food habits. The balance of sustainability rests in the overall equilibrium of our daily choices. For the Italian meat chain, sustainability is an open project which concerns the environment but also animal welfare, the reduction of waste, the protection and the development of a great sector of our food industry that finds in the environmental hourglass the point of equilibrium between human health and environmental protection.
So, explain better in a better English, that's what the environmental hourglass is about. The hours of activity, as I said, is a communication project, and we have different stakeholders to whom we are addressing the message. And of course, there is the institutional one. So, Carni Sostenibili is not only being presented at the European Parliament in Brussels or at the Italian Senate in Rome, but is constantly having a dialogue with the major institutions to give also a scientific support in choosing what the institutions are doing, are choosing for us. So that's a very important part. Then the presence of the social media. It's unfortunately my job right now is part of my job, because as a freelance journalist, I could also, these last 10 years, focusing on the social media part and the SEO. So I'm helping the association to find the right key messages, so what the people are searching on the search engines, so to see what the people are concerned about, to find with the sources of our study and the other many informations we're gathering in Italy and around the world, the way to produce articles, posts, tweets, videos, to get exactly what the people are searching. Video means also YouTube. This year we're going to focus much more on YouTube, and the example is the one I was saying about the young farmers. So to go to, not to make it, we don't want to teach, we want to show what these guys are doing. And the social media needs a particular language. So you cannot speak like a scientist to the people writing, sorry for my French, mostly bullshit, or reading this kind of stuff on the social media. So there is really a compromise sometimes you have to find. And then, of course, organization of documents, so events, and every event with a specific document. So we organized events for people making sport, events with, these are the main events organized by the association these last year. So since the first presentation of the project in Milan, just before Expo 2015, of course in Rome at the Senate, with the famous chef Massimo Bottura. This was an event focused on children, because it was made with the major association of pediatricians in Italy, and that was an amazing, it was very helpful, because every TV channel was speaking of that, and there was a peak of attention towards the project. The European Parliament, as I was saying, organizing a scientific symposium. But I don't know how many journalists there are here today besides myself, but that was a symposium, a scientific symposium, not for experts, not only for experts, but for journalists. So what we are doing today for the press mostly. And this lady, I'll be back to her later, because she's the one, she's the culprit, she's the reason for which I wrote the book myself. This is a pediatrician, the head of the pediatrician of the hospital in Trento, so northeast of Italy, nearly Austria, so not a poor area. 40 years of experience, and I could interview her, not there, but in another moment. And this doctor, this medical doctor, told me 40 years of experience in Trento, and I started these last years to see children with rachitismus, children with anemic shocks, children with 1 year old big like babies, 3-4 months old. And she said, I have nothing against the choices of the food choices of people, but they're always children from vegan couples who are seeing maybe a video on YouTube, they're seeing a TV program, some kind of message, incorrect information, and for a goodwill, they decide from one day to the other to cut every animal food for their children, and you see these things. I have 2 small children. When I spoke with this lady, I thought, okay, I put my face as well, and I try, as they consider me in Italy an influencer, I would say a micro-influencer, because influencers have other numbers, but I start spreading the message myself, because it's unacceptable in 2019. Then, of course, book presentations. This is a nutritionist in Italy, or the soy, about soy. So all this tofu, all these meat substitutes, what are they doing to our health? Are we really ready suddenly to eat all this stuff? So there is Susanna Bramante, who's writing for the website of Carni Sostenibili, who wrote a book about that. This is another amazing, important publication from the University of Bologna. Professor Vincenzo Russo and his equipe showed for the first time in Europe, nearly in the world, because as far as I know only in Japan they've done it, they calculated the real consumption of meat, not the apparent. And they figured out, it was a big job, it took really years. You find this book if you like, but I guess only in Italian for the time being. They figure out that in Italy, they say the estimations, I think also of FAO, are speaking of 90 kilos of meat per capita per year. The real consumption is 30 kilos and a half. It's even not the half. So they say, why? Because we don't eat the entire animal. So the edible part, particularly of ruminants, is quite small. So the real consumption is much lower, and is basically the possibility to see from the bottom the nutritional guidelines, because it's not only about meat but also about other food. They speak of fish and veggies and so on. Now, other events. This one was a small marathon for elderly people, because Italy is having this double record of low birth and a huge amount of elderly people who tend to eat less and less meat and animal products, and it can be dangerous. And in November, the book was published. And my book, the association helped me to make the first presentation of my book in Milan, and so on and so forth. Here we're involving. This is my. I'm glad to say that was my idea to involve this group of young environmental journalists. So kids, between 7 and 21, who want to become an environmental journalist, and we are giving them informations when they want to deal with these topics. So they came and they say, we are only, like myself, when you deal with the environment, you only hear messages against meat consumption and production and consumption. So they asked, and we are giving some infos. And today, of course, presenting here the project. CO2 emissions. So how we do that? As I said, again, very easily. Like Professor Mittlerner was doing before, very effective, some key points in which you let people understand that you are there eating a salad and refusing meat, and then you take planes really easily. So it's fine. I'm here by plane as well, by the way. But attention, because it's a misunderstanding, thinking that without eating meat you save the planet, you save the climate, and so on and so forth. Like Dr. Bryans was saying, all these young people protesting, also in Italy, also in Rome, in Milan, you see them. I'm personally glad to see teenagers protesting instead of staying on the mobile phone all the day, or on the PlayStation, Xbox, whatever. But first, they need to be told that they can fall in a trap of some green thoughts and attitudes. And second, they need to be taken to consider the entire frame. So the environmental protection is not only cutting meat, cutting that, is much more. But again, when you say a person that one single flight from Rome to Brussels and return is producing more CO2 than the entire year consumption of an Italian of meat and cold cuts, maybe can be effective. So this is an example of a graphic that we send to newspapers and so on. Again, about staying on this, because there are many myths they're talking about in Carni Sostenibili. This is again about CO2 emissions. So to show, because I had personally a big fight, public fight on Twitter with a colleague, an important journalist from the Corriere della Sera. I figure out at the end, after a few messages, vegetarian since 30 years, saying that it was enough, publicly on her profile, it was enough to cut meat and cold cuts to be fine with climate change. She wrote, it's not important to take an electric car, to recycle plastic, it's enough. She wrote like that, I couldn't resist. I should shut up, because then it takes me 2 days of people attacking me, but say, so the next intercontinental flight we take, we just choose the veggie menu, we're fine. And then this started 2 days of craziness. So, again, to show that transports, like Professor Mittlerner was saying this morning, transport stations and the energy sector are producing much more CO2 and greenhouse gases than meat production. So, as I mentioned before, the book that some of you have physically, we provided a few copies for free, surely for the speakers, but for those who didn't get it, I'm happy to tell you that since 2 days there is the new version of the website of Carni Sostenibili, thesustainablemeat.com, if you want it in English, and there on the home page you can find it for free, so you can download it for free, because the publisher Franco Angeli, is only in Italy, so he doesn't have an international distribution, so he gave us the permission to download it for free, so if you're interested. And it's the updated version of the previous two scientific reports which have been published by Carni Sostenibili. Last thing, as I said, I myself wrote a book about these topics, In difesa della carne, in defense of meat, not translated in English yet, but apparently it can happen this next month, in which, as I said, I'm explaining why a journalist writing about environment is standing this position. And it's something which was really raising a lot of attention in Italy, because this small publication is nothing scientific. Don't expect I wanted to make it as small, short, and understandable as possible. Raised a lot of attention. It took me to the major TV programs and so on to fight with vegans and so on. Because unfortunately, sometimes it's not really interesting, the TV world, but I explained the path of myself. I'm taking the major myth about meat production, so the hormones, the antibiotics. We're speaking about the poultry sector and that antibiotic resistance, which is a deal, is an issue. In Italy, the poultry sector has reduced by 40% the use of antibiotics in 3 years. So start saying these things, or all these informations, like the famous 15,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of beef. That's not true. It's an estimation which doesn't make any distinction between green, blue, and gray water. So the 90% of the water used to produce meat is green, so it's going back to the natural cycle. So I'm saying easily these things, and I'm speaking another topic. I feel very much about the south of the world. We're mentioning today with Dr. Mottet, because I have to hear nearly every day that we need to veganize Africa and to do this and to do that. So I'm going to speak about the south of the world, also mentioning the Ministry of Agriculture of Ethiopia, who replied to the Eat Lancet universal diet. I thank you, Fred and Martin Cohen, Frédéric Leroy, Professor Leroy, and Martin Cohen, because they wrote an article, an amazing article you have all read, I guess, which was in Italy the beginning of the end of this nonsense of the universal diet. Then also the institution, the Italian mission of the UN in Geneva took the position in speaking out that it was not sensible proposing a universal diet in such a different world. And close brackets, speaking about women emancipation and how livestock is helping the south of the world to save itself from starvation, from hunger, like the Ministry of Environment of Ethiopia said, replying to the Eat Lancet Commission. Or also, on an environmental point of view, they put the water, so they put Central Asia and Western Europe together, as if the water consumption in Ireland is like in the desert of Kazakhstan. So saying these things to the people through good articles, through a constant, continuous activity on the social media and the media, because it's not a spot activity, was really helpful to show that it was not really sensible what they were talking about. So I do it myself in this book. But as I said, if you want to deepen what we're talking about, I hope this can be the first step towards a European Carni Sostenibili project. You can find the association on the website, on the major social media, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Andrea. That was fascinating. We have a question for you here, and I'll leave you back to the microphone.
Thank you, Andrea. My name is Angelo Damari. I work for UCBV. We follow every day your posts, your activity. It's a very good initiative. My question was related, okay, today we have spoken a lot about social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. We have also seen through the different presentation that there is a different approach as a function of the age and also on the sex of the people that in the perception, I mean. My question, which is a little bit provocative as well, is what are for you the long-term plan in terms of communication, overall focused to the youngest generation? So me, today I live in Brussels, and I think that 95% of the young guys have never visited a farm. They have no idea what is a farm. They live on social media, and they digest all the things that pass through Facebook, Twitter, and whatever. Do you think that we should start to bring these people to the reality, letting them understand how things are going on the reality, further to this kind of communication, which is useful, but you can understand that a 7, 8, 10 years old guy won't never access carne sostenibili, or neither, unfortunately, will be able to understand the content of high-level scientific internet sites or Twitter accounts where you have a percentage, metrics, and so on. So my question is, how would you solve that thing in a horizontal way between the dairy farming and the meat sector, that for me they should cooperate together, because we know that Roman Empire was built on the motto dividi et imperat, and we should be united from under that thing.
Thank you for the question. Actually, yes, it's surely important, and Carne Sostenibili started, I was speaking about the giornalisti nell'erba, so these young environmental journalists. That's a way, the major way of the project right now, because these guys are making reportages and so on, and we are taking them to farms to see how really things are working, because their public is, of course, other kids. So it's no brainwashing, it's no greenwashing, it's just showing, as you said, mostly these guys have never seen a farm. There is also another project really interesting. For the time being, I think only in Apulia, open farms. So you take people, and particularly schools, to visit farms. You're educating these guys to see how really things are really working. And another way, as we have said already, also Dr. Bryans, engaging their idols. People giving the right message, but not like the actor saying that you need to cut meat, the Monday. Meat-free Mondays, sorry, but testimonials, promise, they say in Germany, influencers, actors, artists, which are a reference for the young people, giving the right messages. It's very complex because it's a delicate thing, but that's another way.
Hello. Hi. May I ask you an indiscreet question? You are a journalist.
Depends.
You are a journalist.
Yes.
But do you have a scientific background?
What
is your educational background?
No, actually, I have a degree in sociology, so I'm not a
You
technical.
have never heard about molecules and this kind of thing, and carbohydrates and structures. So you translate this to these people, and you translate scientific knowledge. An important fact is that this is very okay, because we have to translate that to decision makers. So we are very close to the parliament here. 90% of those people studied law, never heard anything about molecules, carbohydrates, so it is very important to influence them also. 10% are medical doctors or economists. Scientists you don't find here in the close neighborhood in the parliament or in the government. So this is a big problem, actually.
Absolutely, and that's the institutional part of the communication. Myself, nothing indiscreet, I have nothing to hide. That's why I was a bit also nervous today, because I'm the only one without a doctor or professor title today. But again, I have behind, when I'm speaking of this stuff, real experts, academics, scientists, and who are not only producing the scientific informations, but they're
Translators.
giving me, no, I am the translators. I'm first learning, because before speaking of this stuff myself, and I'm doing that, you see that informally, I have to learn, and it took me a few years. Still, I'm not a scientist. I don't care of being a scientist. I'm a communicator, and I'm taking what the guys were speaking today to the public. I'm the link between the two worlds. With the politics less, because I have nothing to do with them, but when I'm collaborating with this project, yes, because, as I said, let's say to influence the institution is very important. Thank you very much again.
Andrea, thank you again very much, and it's very kind of you to make your book available to everybody, so I hope that people will take the opportunity to get hold of a copy of that.